The crisp autumn wind whipped stray leaves across the cracked asphalt of Maple Street Motors, rustling them into small, forgotten piles. Against the faded yellow paint of the showroom, Elias Henderson, a man whose silver hair had thinned along with his hopes, stood by the plate glass window, his gaze sweeping across the near-empty lot. Once this place had hummed with activity, families pointing at shiny new models, salesmen in smart suits gesturing enthusiastically, the satisfying thud of car doors closing on a test drive. Now, only a scattering of vehicles remained, gathering a fine layer of dust despite Brenda's diligent efforts to keep them presentable. Elias sighed the sound, a ragged whisper in the cavernous quiet showroom. The air inside felt heavy, thick with the scent of stale coffee and unspoken worries. He ran a calloused hand over the smooth, cool surface of a polished fender, a sky blue sedan, practically begging for a driver. It had been sitting there for 3 months. 3 months. Too long. His father had opened Maple Street Motors back in '48, a year after Elias was born. He remembered the grand opening, the bunting, the proud glint in his father's eye. He'd taken over the business himself in the late '70s, a legacy he'd vowed to uphold. For decades, they'd been the go-to dealership in town, serving generations of families. They'd seen folks buy their first car, then their family car, then a sturdy pickup for their son. Elias knew every make, every model, every customer by name. He'd poured his entire life, his heart, and every last penny of his savings into this place, even after his dear Martha passed, leaving him with only the echoes of their shared dreams within these walls. But times had changed. The big chain dealerships with their flashy commercials and aggressive pricing had moved into the city just 20 miles down the highway. Maple Street Motors, with its honest handshake deals and its quiet integrity, simply couldn't compete. The trickle of customers had slowed to a near halt. For months, Elias had been dipping into his retirement fund, trying to keep the lights on, trying to pay Brenda and young Jimmy, his mechanic, their meager salaries. He'd cut corners everywhere else, eating canned soup for dinner, making his worn suits last another season. He walked past Brenda's desk. She was hunched over the ledger, her brow furrowed, a silent apology in her posture. Brenda had been with him for 25 years. She knew the numbers better than he did, knew the dire reality looming over them like a dark storm cloud. "Any calls, Brenda?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. She looked up, her kind eyes full of a concern she tried to hide. "Just the bank, Mr. Henderson, again." Elias nodded, pressing his lips into a thin line. The bank, Mr. Harrison, from First National, had been increasingly firm, his tone devoid of the usual pleasantries. The final payment on the loan was due next week. If he couldn't make it, Maple Street Motors would be foreclosed. The thought knotted his stomach. A cold, hard stone. It wasn't just the loss of the business. It was the loss of his identity, his purpose. It was letting down his father's memory, Martha's quiet faith in him, and the loyal employees who depended on him. He moved to his small, cluttered office, the scent of old paper and dust motes dancing in the weak afternoon light filtering through the grimy window. His desk was piled with bills, past due notices, and a single faded photograph of Martha, smiling brightly. He sank into his worn leather chair, the springs groaning in protest. He leaned back, closing his eyes, trying to conjure a solution, any solution. But his mind was a blank, an echoing void of despair. He saw Jimmy out in the garage, hunched over the engine of a beat-up pickup truck. Jimmy, barely 22, with a young wife and a baby on the way. Elias remembered hiring him right out of vocational school, teaching him the ropes, the satisfaction of seeing him grow into a skilled mechanic. What would Jimmy do? What would Brenda do? The weight of their futures felt heavier than his own. He pushed himself up and walked back to the window. The gust of wind rattled the glass. He could almost hear the ghosts of happier times in the quiet showroom, the laughter, the chatter, the ringing of the sales bell. He looked at the few cars left, lonely sentinels in the encroaching gloom. A modest station wagon, a sturdy sedan, A couple of sporty coups that had long lost their luster. Maybe if he could just sell one or two more, make a dent, show the bank he was trying, but who would buy them now? Town was drying up too. People moving away for work. Businesses closing. Maple Street Motors was just another casualty of changing times. He watched a lone tumbleweed of leaves skitter across the deserted lot. This was it, the end of the road. He felt a profound weariness settle into his bones, a defeat so complete it almost hurt. He wasn't sure how he was going to tell Brenda or Jimmy that it was over. He just wasn't sure. Just as the first fat raindrops began to splatter against the window, a flash as something unusual caught Elias's eye at the far end of Maple Street. A long, sleek black car like something out of a movie glided slowly toward the dealership. It wasn't the kind of vehicle you saw often in their quiet town, not anymore. Elias blinked, wondering if his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. Car pulled into the lot, its polished chrome gleaming even in the dim light, and parked directly in front of the showroom. Two men got out tall and broad-shouldered, their dark suits stark against the gray afternoon, and then a third man emerged from the backseat, impossibly tall, with dark, slicked back hair and a presence that seemed to fill the entire street. Elias's heart gave an odd, startled lurch. He just stared. The man looked directly at the showroom, then at the scattered cars. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips. Elias Henderson watched, rooted to the spot as the impossibly stylish man approached the showroom door. The two broad-shouldered men in dark suits lingered by the imposing black car, their eyes scanning the quiet street like watchful sentinels. Elias's mind, usually so clear and logical, despite his despair, struggled to process the scene unfolding before him. This wasn't a potential customer looking for a sensible family sedan. This was something else entirely. The man who walked toward the door moved with an easy confidence, a natural swagger that drew the eye. He was dressed impeccably, dark trousers, a crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and a vibrant silk scarf knotted loosely around his neck. Even from this distance, Elias could feel an undeniable aura emanating from him, a kind of electrifying energy. As the man pushed open the glass door, a faint jingle from the bell above announcing his arrival, Elias finally recognized him. His heart gave another lurch, this time a dizzying flip-flop of disbelief. It was him. It had to be. The sideburns, the famous smile, the way he carried himself. There was no mistaking it. Elvis Presley, the king himself here. In Maple Street Motors, Elias felt a faint flush spread across his cheeks. He instinctively straightened his tie, a nervous habit he hadn't indulged in years. Brenda, who had been peering over her ledger, gasped audibly beside him. She dropped her pen, which clattered on the desktop, and stared wide-eyed at the legendary singer. Elvis paused just inside the door, letting his gaze sweep across the showroom. His eyes, surprisingly warm and direct, landed on Elias. He offered a slow, charming smile that Elias had seen countless times on television and movie screens, but never in person. Afternoon, Elvis drawled, his voice a smooth, deep rumble, exactly as Elias remembered it. "Nice little spot you got here." Elias cleared his throat suddenly, feeling like a tongue-tied teenager. "Mr. Presley," he managed, his voice cracking slightly. I'm Elias Henderson. I own the place. Welcome to Maple Street Motors." Elvis chuckled, a genuine, hearty sound that seemed to banish some of the oppressive quiet from the showroom. "Elias, pleasure to meet you. Just Elvis, please." He extended a hand, and Elias automatically reached out, shaking it. Elvis's grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. "What brings you to our humble establishment, Elvis?" Elias asked, trying to sound professional, but his voice still trembled slightly with disbelief. He glanced at Brenda, who was still frozen, her mouth slightly agape. Elvis's gaze drifted to the few cars parked in the showroom, then out to the nearly empty lot. "Well, Elias, I'm in the market for a new car, or maybe a few new cars, depending on what you got." He winked. Elias felt a strange mix of hope and utter bewilderment. A few cars. He had only a handful left. We have a modest selection, Elvis. He began gesturing vaguely toward the 2 cars parked inside. That blue sedan there, a real smooth ride. And over here, a very reliable family station wagon. We also have a couple of sportier models outside. A red coupe and a convertible if you're looking for something with a bit more zip. Elvis walked slowly around the blue sedan, running his hand along its roof. His movements were unhurried, almost thoughtful. Nice. Real nice. But I was thinking something a little bigger. Maybe you got any Cadillacs? Elias felt a pang of regret. Not anymore. I'm afraid we used to stock them, of course, back in the day. But we've downsized our inventory recently. Had to. He didn't elaborate, not wanting to burden Elvis with his financial woes. Elvis nodded slowly, as if understanding without being told. He turned to face Elias fully, his expression serious but still with that compelling warmth in his eyes. So, you're telling me, this is it? This is all the inventory you got left? He gestured around the showroom, then toward the sparse lot outside. Elias swallowed hard. Yes, Elvis, that's about it. We've been going through a rough patch. He braced himself for the inevitable polite excuse, the quick departure. Celebrities didn't buy cars from struggling small-town dealerships. They bought them from luxury showrooms in Beverly Hills or New York. Elvis considered this for a moment, his gaze unwavering. Then a slow smile spread across his face. Not the flashy, public smile, but a genuine, almost mischievous one. Well, Elias, he said, his voice dropping slightly, what if I told you I wasn't just interested in 1 or 2 cars? Elias blinked, confused. I'm not sure I follow. Elvis took a step closer, his voice soft, almost conspiratorial. What if I told you I was interested in buying all of them? Elias stared. His jaw felt like it was unhinged. Brenda let out a small strangle sound behind him, clutching her chest. Elias searched Elvis's face for any sign of a joke. A prank. But his eyes were sincere, twinkling with something Elias couldn't quite decipher. All of them? Elias repeated the words, feeling foreign and impossible on his tongue. You mean every single car we have? Elvis nodded, a casual shrug of his powerful shoulders. Every single one. The sedans, the station wagon, the coues, that convertible out there, the whole lot. He paused, then added, What's the asking price for the entire inventory, Elias? Elias's mind reeled. The numbers, the desperation, the looming foreclosure, it all crashed together in a jumble. He had priced each car individually, hoping to chip away at his debt, but selling them all at once. It was an unheard-of proposition. It was salvation. It was a miracle. He looked at Elvis, then at Brenda, whose face had gone pale with shock. Elias's heart began to pound a furious rhythm against his ribs. This couldn't be real, it simply couldn't. Elias managed, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to say. Elvis just smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. Well, let's start with a number, Elias. What would it take for me to walk out of here today with every single car on your lot? He looked around as if taking inventory himself, and then back at Elias, his gaze steady and patient. Don't worry about the logistics, Elias. We'll figure that out. Just give me a number. Elias felt a sudden rush of adrenaline, quickly followed by a wave of something akin to fear. Was this some kind of trick? He had to be careful. But the man standing before him, the very king of rock and roll, looked genuinely interested, genuinely kind. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. This was either the greatest moment of his life or the cruelest joke. Elias Henderson swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. The words, all of them, echoed in his mind, mingling with the insistent drumbeat of his pounding heart. He glanced at Brenda, who looked as if she'd seen a ghost, or perhaps in this case an angel. Elvis Presley stood before him, calm and composed, patiently waiting for an answer. Elias began, his voice still a little shaky. That's an extraordinary request. No one has ever. He trailed off. the reality of the situation almost too big to grasp. He was used to haggling over $100, maybe $200 if a customer was particularly keen, but this was a different galaxy. Entirely. Elvis simply smiled a relaxed, easy smile that disarmed Elias slightly. "I like to do things differently, Elias. Life's too short for small dreams, wouldn't you say?" Elias felt a flicker of hope, bright and dangerous in his chest, but he also felt a deep-seated caution. He was a businessman, an old-school one, and this felt too good to be true. "Are you serious, Elvis?" he asked, needing to hear it again, explicitly. "Serious as a heart attack," Elias Elvis replied, his eyes twinkling. "I got a lot of friends, a whole lot of friends, and they could use some new wheels." He gestured out towards the small collection of cars on the lot. "Besides, I hear good things about Maple Street Motors. Heard you're an honest man." Elias felt a warmth spread through him at the compliment. "I try to be. Elvis. Always have." He thought quickly. He knew the wholesale value of each car, what he'd paid for them, and what he'd hoped to sell them for individually. He also knew the precise amount he needed to pay off the bank, keep the business afloat, and have enough left over to restart. He mentally tabulated the numbers: the blue sedan, the station wagon, the red coupe, the convertible, and a handful of used cars they had taken in trade over the past few months. He quickly added up their individual asking prices, then added a little more for the sheer volume and the unprecedented nature of the offer. "Well," Elvis Elias said, gathering his courage, "for the entire lot, all 7 vehicles I could let them go for." He paused, doing one last mental calculation, aiming for a figure that would truly save his business and secure his future. The number hung in the air, audacious and almost unbelievable to Elias himself. It was a fair price, a good price for the lot, but it was also a number that felt monumental to a struggling small businessman. He watched Elvis's face for a reaction, a frown, a scoff. But Elvis's expression remained unchanged, calm and considering. Elvis nodded slowly. 55,000. "I can do that, Elias." Elias's jaw dropped. Brenda let out a small squeak. Elias waited, expecting him to say, "Just kidding," or "on one condition." But Elvis just looked at him, his gaze steady. "You're serious?" Elias stammered, barely believing his own ears. "Serious as a heart attack," Elias Elvis repeated with a grin. "Got a good feeling about this place, about you." He looked around again. "Looks like you could use a break too." Elias felt a sudden sting in his eyes. He quickly blinked it away. The man saw right through him. He saw the desperation, the struggle. And instead of exploiting it, he was offering a lifeline, a genuine act of profound generosity. How would you like to handle payment, Elvis?" Elias asked, trying to sound professional despite the lump forming in his throat. "Cash, of course," Elvis said casually, as if buying an entire car dealership's inventory with cash was an everyday occurrence. He gestured toward one of the men in suits who had just entered the showroom. Moving with quiet efficiency, "Tom, go grab the case from the car." The man, Tom, nodded silently and disappeared back outside. "Elias," he meant a briefcase full of cash. Within moments, Tom returned, carrying a rather heavy-looking black briefcase. He placed it gently on Elias's cluttered desk. Elvis nodded to Elias. "Go on, Elias." Elias hesitated, his hands trembling slightly. As he reached for the latch, he unclipped it, and the case sprang open. Inside, stacked in neat bundles, were crisp, new $100 bills. Elias stared speechless. It was an overwhelming sight. He'd never seen so much cash in his life. I don't think I need to count it, Elvis," Elias said, looking up, his voice thick with emotion. "I trust you." Elvis's smile broadened. "That's good to hear, Elias, but it's your business. You make sure it's all there." He watched patiently as Elias, despite his words, started to count his fingers, Fumbling a little, Brenda, recovered from her initial shock, came to stand beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. Elias counted slowly, meticulously, trying to maintain some semblance of professionalism. 55 bundles of $1,000 each, $55,000. It was all there, exactly as Elvis had said. The sheer weight of the money in his hands felt incredible, a tangible symbol of salvation. "It's all here, Elvis." Elias finally managed, his voice thick with a mixture of awe and immense relief. "Good," Elvis said simply. He extended a hand again, and Elias, still holding a stack of money in his other hand, shook it, a profound gratitude washing over him. "So, the cars are mine. What's next?" Elias's mind, still reeling, quickly shifted into business mode. "Well, we'll need to do the paperwork, the titles, bill of sale, that kind of thing. And then for transport, how will you manage to move all 7 vehicles?" Elvis chuckled. "Of course, Elvis, of course." Elias practically beamed. "Take all the time you need. They're your cars now." He gestured to Brenda. "Brenda, start getting those titles ready. We need to transfer ownership." Brenda, still looking a little shell-shocked, nodded vigorously, already pulling out the necessary forms. Elvis turned to leave his men waiting by the door. "It was a pleasure doing business with you, Elias," he said, his voice warm. "And a pleasure meeting you too, Brenda." As Elvis stepped out, the crisp autumn air seemed to carry a lighter, more hopeful scent. Elias stood in the silent showroom, the briefcase full of cash still open on his desk, the overwhelming reality of what had just happened settling over him. Maple Street Motors was saved, just like that, by Elvis Presley. He looked at Brenda, and a slow, disbelieving smile spread across his face. Brenda, for her part, simply shook her head, a tear tracing a path down her cheek, but it was a tear of pure, unadulterated relief. The impossible had happened. The showroom felt different, lighter. The oppressive weight that had been pressing down on Elias for months had lifted, replaced by a giddy, almost unbelievable sense of relief. He watched Elvis's black car disappear down Maple Street, leaving behind only the lingering scent of gasoline and a ripple of disbelief in its wake. Brenda was already at the filing cabinet, her movements more brisk and purposeful than they had been in weeks. "Titles, Mr. Henderson," she said, her voice still a little breathless. "All 7 of them. And the bills of sale. Do you want me to type them up immediately?" "Yes, Brenda, immediately," Elias said, walking over to his desk where the briefcase still lay open, revealing the crisp stacks of money. He closed it with a soft click, as if to make the incredible reality tangible. "And call the bank. Tell Mr. Harrison the payment will be made in full first thing tomorrow morning. Tell him to expect a wire transfer or a cashier's check. Tell him it's taken care of. Bria." Brenda nodded, a joyous, watery smile on her face. "Oh, Mr. Henderson, I can't believe it. Elvis Presley here, and he bought every single car." Elias chuckled, a sound that felt foreign after so much despair. "Neither can I, Brenda, neither can I." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. $55,000, just like that. He walked over to the garage door. Young Jimmy, his hands still grimy with grease from the truck he was working on, looked up, startled by Elias's sudden appearance. "Jimmy?" Elias exclaimed, his voice ringing with an emotion Jimmy hadn't heard in a long time. "Come here, son. I've got something to tell you." Jimmy wiped his hands on a rag and walked over, his brow furrowed with concern. Probably thought Elias was about to deliver the bad news, the closure, the layoffs. Elias clapped a hand on Jimmy's shoulder. "Son, you're not going to believe this. We just sold every single car on the lot, every last one." Jimmy blinked. "Every car, sir? Who bought them?" Elias couldn't suppress the grin that spread across his face. "Elvis Presley, Jimmy the King himself. He just walked in and he bought everything." He looked around the garage as if expecting Elvis to suddenly appear from behind a stack of tires. Elvis Presley, you mean? The Elvis Presley from the radio? The very same, Elias confirmed, feeling a surge of pure joy at being able to deliver such incredible news. He paid cash. $55,000. Maple Street Motors is saved, Jimmy. Not just saved, but we're going to be better than ever. Jimmy let out a whoop of delight, startling Elias. Holy cow, Mr. Henderson. That's incredible. I thought we were done for. He clapped Elias on the back, a gesture Elias happily allowed. Thank goodness, my wife, she's due next month, and I was so worried about how we were going to make ends meet. Elias's smile softened. I know, son. I know, that's why I wanted to tell you first thing. You've been a good mechanic, a loyal employee, and you're going to be a good father. Don't you worry about a thing now. The relief on Jimmy's face was palpable. He looked like a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He pumped his fist in the air. This is the best day ever, Mr. Henderson. It certainly is, Jimmy Elias agreed. Now we have a lot of work to do. We need to get these cars ready for pickup. They're still technically here for a day or two, but they're Elvis's cars. Now we need to make sure they're spotless, gassed up, and in perfect running order. You bet I am, sir, Jimmy said, already heading back to the vehicles with renewed energy. I'll have them gleaming. Elias watched him go, a profound sense of peace settling over him. He walked back to his office, feeling a lightness in his step he hadn't experienced in years. He sat down at his desk, opened the briefcase, and just stared at the stacks of money. It wasn't just money, it was freedom. It was opportunity. He thought about Elvis's generosity. How could a man just walk in and do something so incredibly kind, so utterly life-changing for a complete stranger? It wasn't a business transaction in the typical sense. It was an act of pure, spontaneous benevolence. He had heard stories about Elvis's generosity, the cars he bought for people, the impromptu gifts, but to experience it firsthand was something else entirely. Brenda brought over the first completed title transfer. Here's the blue sedan, Mr. Henderson. All signed and ready. Do you think Elvis will send someone for these documents? He said he would, Brenda. Probably one of those gentlemen who were with him. Elias picked up the title, his fingers tracing the name Elvis Presley, now officially listed as the new owner. It felt more real. He knew the news would spread like wildfire through their small town. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Maple Street Motors saved by the king. It would be a legend, and it would change everything. The despair was gone, replaced by an exciting, almost terrifying sense of possibility. He could restock the lot, invest in new models, maybe even hire another mechanic. He could finally fix the leaky roof in the garage, repaint the showroom, put up a new sign. But most importantly, he could sleep tonight. Really sleep for the first time in months without the crushing weight of impending failure hanging over him. He looked at Martha's faded photograph on his desk. We did it, Martha, he whispered, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down his weathered cheek. We made it. The phone rang, startling him. He picked it up. Maple Street Motors, Elias Henderson speaking. It was Mr. Harrison from the bank, his voice curt. Mr. Henderson, I was just calling to remind you about the payment due next week. We're really at the end of the line here. Elias felt a smile spread across his face, a genuine, unburdened smile. No need to remind me, Mr. Harrison. The payment will be wired to your account, in full. First thing tomorrow morning. Consider Maple Street Motors' account in the black. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end, then Mr. Harrison's voice, now laced with surprise. Really? That's excellent news, Mr. Henderson. How did you manage that? Elias leaned back in his chair, a contented sigh escaping his lips. Let's just say, Mr. Harrison, we had a very special customer today. He hung up, a sense of sweet victory washing over him. The battle was won. The news of Elvis Presley's visit and his unprecedented purchase spread through the quiet town faster than a wildfire. By late afternoon, Elias's phone began to ring incessantly. His neighbors and friends calling their voices a mix of disbelief, excitement, and outright awe. Elias. Is it true? Agnes Perkins, the owner of the local bakery, practically shrieked through the phone. My delivery boy just came back, saying Elvis Presley was seen leaving your dealership. And he bought all your cars. Elias chuckled, enjoying the novelty of sharing such extraordinary news. It's true, Agnes. Every single one of them paid cash. Cash? Agnes gasped. Well, I'll be. I always knew you were a good man. Elias, looks like good things finally happen to good people. Elias heard similar sentiments all evening. Mr. Johnson from the hardware store called Mr. Davis from the diner. Even the mayor's secretary called, politely inquiring about the rumors swirling through town. Elias repeated the story, each time feeling a renewed sense of wonder at the incredible events of the day. Brenda, after ensuring all the paperwork was meticulously prepared and double-checked, had gone home promising to return bright and early. Elias knew she'd be sharing the story with her family, probably still shaking her head in amazement. Jimmy had stayed late, meticulously cleaning the exterior of the red coupe, humming an Elvis tune under his breath. The mood in the usually somber garage was electric with new energy. Elias finally locked up Maple Street Motors after dark, the empty showroom echoing with a new kind of silence, a peaceful, hopeful one. He looked at the few cars left, now officially owned by Elvis Presley, gleaming under the faint lot lights. They weren't just cars anymore, they were symbols of a miracle. As he drove home in his own old sedan, Elias found himself grinning like a fool. Pictured Mr. Harrison's face at the bank tomorrow when he saw the wire transfer. He imagined the relief on Jimmy's young wife's face when she heard the good news about his secure job. He thought of Martha and how proud she would have been. The next morning, Elias arrived at the dealership even earlier than usual, the excitement bubbling within him. He found Brenda already there, coffee brewing, her eyes bright. The bank confirmed the transfer, Mr. Henderson, she announced, practically bouncing on her toes. Mr. Harrison called personally. He said he was absolutely astonished. He said he'd never seen a turnaround like it in all his years of banking. Good. Elias said, a quiet satisfaction in his voice. Now we can focus on the future. What are we going to do with this place, Brenda? Brenda looked around the showroom, her gaze lingering on the empty spaces where cars once sat. Well, first we need to get some new inventory, don't we? And maybe a fresh coat of paint in here. That yellow is starting to look a bit tired. Excellent ideas, Brenda, Elias said, feeling a surge of renewed energy. And after we're done with that, I'm thinking we should have a little celebration for the staff. Maybe a bonus for you and Jimmy. You've both stuck by me through thick and thin. Brenda's eyes welled up. Oh, Mr. Henderson, you don't have to do that. Yes, I do. Brenda, Elias insisted gently. Later that morning, a sleek black limousine pulled up to Maple Street Motors. Tom, the quiet man from yesterday, stepped out. He was dressed in the same sharp suit, his demeanor as professional as ever. Morning, Elias, Tom said, a faint, polite smile on his face. Elvis sent me to pick up the paperwork for the cars. Elias had everything neatly organized in a folder. Right here, Tom, all the titles, bills of sale, and registration forms, all signed and ready. Tom took the folder, flipping through the documents to ensure everything was there. Excellent. And the cars? They're still here, I presume. Yes, they are, Elias confirmed, gesturing to the small cluster of vehicles that now felt infinitely more valuable. Jimmy has them all polished up, gassed, and ready to go whenever Elvis needs them. Tom nodded. Elvis likes to move fast when he gets an idea. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh. And Elvis asked me to extend an invitation. He's holding a little gathering at his home in Memphis after the cars are distributed. He'd like for you and Brenda to come. Elias was stunned. An invitation to Elvis's home? Well, that's incredibly kind of him, Tom. we'd be honored." "Good," Tom said. And with another nod, he was back in the limousine, disappearing down the street. Elias stood there for a moment, processing this new development. Not only had Elvis saved his business, but he was inviting him to his home. It was like something out of a movie. He thought about the cars now waiting patiently for their new owners. Each one a vehicle of destiny, hand-picked by the king of rock and roll. He wondered about the people who would receive them. Who were these friends of Elvis? What were their stories? And how would these unexpected gifts change their lives, just as they had changed his? He walked over to the blue sedan, running his hand over its smooth paint. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a vessel of hope, a symbol of profound kindness, ready to carry someone else into a brighter future. The thought filled him with a quiet, satisfying joy. The following morning dawned bright and clear, as if the sun itself was celebrating the new era at Maple Street Motors. Elias arrived early, feeling a nervous flutter in his stomach that was strangely akin to excitement. He'd barely slept, his mind buzzing with anticipation of Elvis's arrival with his friends. Brenda was already there, buzzing around like a diligent bee, putting the finishing touches on the already gleaming cars. Jimmy, too, was beaming, double-checking tire pressures and wiping down chrome. "They look wonderful, Jimmy," Elias praised, surveying the small fleet lined up neatly on the lot. A convoy of vehicles approached Maple Street Motors. It wasn't just one black limo this time. There were several large cars, some sleek and dark, others more colorfully, all following closely behind a magnificent, shimmering pink Cadillacs. Elias's heart did a little leap. The procession pulled into the lot, fanning out like a carefully orchestrated display. The doors opened and a stream of people began to emerge. Elias counted quickly. 10, maybe 12 people. A mix of men and women, all dressed with a certain flair, a vibrant energy that instantly filled the quiet dealership. And then, there he was. Elvis Presley, stepping out of the famous pink Cadillac, looking every bit the legend, but with that same warm, approachable smile Elias had remembered. Elvis spotted Elias and walked over, his arm outstretched. "Elias, morning, my friend." "Not at all, Elvis. We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival," Elias said, shaking Elvis's hand. "The cars are all ready for you." Elvis's eyes swept over the gleaming vehicles, a look of genuine pleasure on his face. "Fantastic, Elias. You've done a fine job." He then turned to his assembled friends. "All right, everyone gather round." The group, a lively mix of faces, Elias recognized from photographs. Some of the famous Memphis Mafia converged around Elvis. There was a buzz of chatter, laughter, and greetings. "Now, folks," Elvis announced, his voice carrying easily over the chatter, "I know you've all been wondering why I dragged you out here to this fine establishment in the middle of nowhere." He winked at Elias. "Well, it's simple. I figured it was time for some of my dearest friends to get some brand new wheels." A collective gasp went through the group, followed by a ripple of excited murmurs. Some looked confused, others ecstatic. Elvis gestured to the array of cars. "Elias, here, the wonderful owner of Maple Street Motors, has been kind enough to sell me his entire inventory. And it's all for you. Pick out whatever you like. It's my gift to you." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. A tall, burly man with a kind face, who Elias recognized as Joe Esposito, one of Elvis's closest confidants, stepped forward, his eyes wide. "Elvis, you're serious, Joe?" Elvis chuckled. "You've been with me through thick and thin. You deserve it." Petite woman with bright red hair, who Elias guessed was one of Elvis's cousins, gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh, Elvis, this is too much." "Nonsense, Patsy," Elvis said, giving her a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. "It's nothing. Just a little thank you for all your loyalty." The friends surged forward, their eyes alight with excitement like children in a candy store. They walked around the cars, touching them, opening doors, peering inside. Elias and Brenda watched a warmth spreading through them as they witnessed the pure joy on these faces. "This blue one is beautiful." Patsy exclaimed, running her hand along the sedan's smooth exterior. Joe Esposito was already sitting in the driver's seat of the station wagon, a wide grin on his face. "This is perfect for the family, Elvis. Thank you, thank you." One younger man, perhaps an aspiring musician, Elvis had taken under his wing, tentatively approached the red coupe. He looked almost reverent. "Is it really for me, Elvis?" he asked, his voice full of awe. "It's yours, Billy," Elvis said warmly. "Drive it in good health." Elias noticed a profound generosity emanating from Elvis. It wasn't just the cars. It was the joy he took in giving, the pure happiness he derived from seeing his friends. Delight. He wasn't just a superstar. He was a deeply kind and caring man. "Elias," Elvis called, drawing him closer to the group, "I want you to meet some of my family. This here is Patsy, my cousin, and this is Joe, my right-hand man. This is Billy, a fine young man with a voice like an angel. And this is Marty and Betty, and so on and so forth." Elias shook hands with each of them, feeling a genuine connection to these people who were part of Elvis's inner circle. They all thanked him for taking care of the cars, for preparing them. Their gratitude was sincere, reflecting the immense value of the gifts they were receiving. As the friends continued to pick their cars, Elvis stepped aside with Elias. "See, Elias," he said softly, a satisfied smile on his face. "Looks like these cars found the right homes, don't you think?" "Absolutely, Elvis," Elias agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "You've made a lot of people very happy today, and you've saved my business, my life, really." Elvis put a comforting hand on Elias's shoulder. "Just doing what I can, Elias. Everyone deserves a break, especially a good man like yourself." He paused, then looked around the bustling lot. "All right, folks. Once you've picked your ride, come see Elias and Brenda. They'll get you set up with the keys and the temporary registration. We'll get the final paperwork mailed to you." Keys clinked. Doors opened and closed, engines purred to life. Quiet, struggling dealership was suddenly alive, filled with the vibrant energy of generosity and gratitude. Elias had never seen anything like it. And it was all thanks to one extraordinary kind-hearted man. The dealership, lot moments ago a quiet testament to struggle, now throbbed with an energy Elias Henderson hadn't felt in years. Elvis's friends, like kids on Christmas morning, milled around, their faces alight with a mixture of disbelief and unbridled joy. Each person carefully chose their new vehicle, their expressions a testament to the magnitude of the gift. Brenda, usually so composed, was practically buzzing. She handled the temporary paperwork, her hands moving quickly but carefully, handing over sets of gleaming keys with a wide, genuine smile. Jimmy, too, seemed to float, directing people to their chosen cars, offering quick tips on features, and beaming at the sight of such happiness. Elias watched as Patsy, Elvis's red-haired cousin, practically skipped around the blue sedan she had chosen. "Oh, it's just perfect," she exclaimed, her voice bubbling with delight. "My old car. Well, it was more rust than car. To be honest, this is like a dream." She embraced Elvis, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Elvis. You always take care of us." Elvis just hugged her back, a soft smile on his face. "You know I love you, Patsy." Joe Esposito, the burly but gentle confidant, took the keys to the station wagon. "This is going to be a godsend, Elvis," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "The kids are getting bigger, and we needed something reliable. This is beyond words." He clapped Elvis on the shoulder, a gesture of deep affection and gratitude. "You're the best friend a man could ask for." Elvis merely nodded, his eyes warm. Elias saw a younger woman, quiet and unassuming, approach the cream convertible. She looked at it with a mixture of awe and trepidation. She ran a hand over the soft leather of the seat. "Elvis," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure this is such a fancy car?" "I don't know." Elvis walked over, a gentle smile on his face. "Susie, you've been working so hard lately, helping out with Gladys's charities. always there when I need a hand. You deserve something nice, something that makes you feel good. This car is yours. Don't you worry about a thing." He handed her the keys. Susie's eyes, wide with disbelief, finally softened into a radiant smile. She slid into the driver's seat, her fingers lightly touching the steering wheel. Elias watched as she turned the key, the engine purring to life. Tentative smile bloomed into pure joy as she put it into gear and slowly, carefully, drove it off the lot. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of freedom, of recognition, of a new chapter for her. The young musician Billy, who had chosen the red coupe, was practically vibrating with excitement. He sat in the driver's seat, revving the engine slightly, a look of pure adoration on his face. "Can't believe this, Elvis," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "This is the most incredible gift I've ever received. Now I can drive to all my gigs, bring my guitar. This changes everything for me. Thank you. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for believing in me." Elvis returned the hug, a knowing look in his eye. "You just keep writing those songs, Billy. This car is going to take you places." Elias was struck by the genuine affection and respect Elvis's friends held for him, and the way Elvis, despite his fame, treated them with such warmth and humility. He wasn't just giving away cars, he was giving away hope, opportunity, and a tangible sign of his unwavering loyalty and love for the people around him. One by one, the cars left the lot, driven away by their ecstatic new owners. Each departure felt like a little burst of happiness, a ripple effect of Elvis's astounding generosity. The lot, though now truly empty, felt fuller than it ever had before. It was filled with the echoes of laughter, the purr of engines, and the lingering warmth of human connection. Finally, only Elvis and his two close security men, Tom and the other man, were left with Elias and Brenda. "Well, Elias," Elvis said, looking around the now empty lot, a satisfied smile on his face. "Mission accomplished, I'd say." "Indeed, Elvis," Elias agreed, his voice still tinged with wonder. "It was quite a sight. You have very grateful friends." "They're good people," Elvis said simply. He clapped Elias on the shoulder again. "Thank you for everything, Elias, for making it so easy and for being a stand-up guy." He pulled a small engraved business card from his pocket. "My home address in Memphis. Don't forget that invitation, Elias. You and Brenda? Just let Tom know when you'd like to come." Elias took the card, feeling the smooth, expensive paper between his fingers. "We'd be honored, Elvis, truly." Elvis gave Elias one last genuine smile, then turned and climbed back into his pink Cadillac. As the magnificent car slowly pulled away from the now empty lot, Elias and Brenda stood side by side, watching it disappear down Maple Street, leaving them in a silence that was no longer heavy with despair, but light with possibility. Brenda turned to Elias, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. But her smile was wide and radiant. "He's truly something, isn't he, Mr. Henderson?" "He is, Brenda," Elias murmured, looking at the empty lot, then at the sky. "He truly is." He felt a profound sense of peace. The crisis was over. The future, once a terrifying blank, was now vibrant with possibility, and it all started with a simple, breathtaking act of kindness from the king. The story of Elvis Presley's visit to Maple Street Motors and his astonishing purchase of every single car became the stuff of local legend almost overnight. It was whispered in the aisles of the grocery store, discussed over coffee at the diner, and celebrated at the town's weekly Rotary Club meeting. For weeks, Elias Henderson found himself a minor celebrity, people stopping him on the street just to shake his hand and marvel at his incredible luck. "Elias, I heard you're going to be buying some new stock, Mr. Johnson," from the hardware store said, leaning conspiratorially over the counter one afternoon. "Needed some new paint for the showroom too, I hear." Elias grinned. "That's right, Mr. Johnson. Planning a bit of a remodel, and yes, a whole new fleet of cars will be arriving next month." The ripple effect was immediate and tangible. The local bank, which had been so close to foreclosing on Elias, was now eager to offer him a new, favorable line of credit. Suppliers who had previously hesitated to extend terms were now calling, offering their best deals. The town, which had felt a little like it was slowly fading, suddenly had a jolt of pride and renewed interest. People from neighboring towns even started driving through just to catch a glimpse of the dealership where Elvis had worked his magic. Elias, true to his word, had given Brenda and Jimmy substantial bonuses. Brenda immediately started planning a new roof for her modest home, while Jimmy put a down payment on a small, safe house for his growing family. The relief evident in his every step. Elias also invested in a complete overhaul of Maple Street Motors. The faded yellow exterior was repainted a crisp, inviting cream. The showroom floor was polished to a brilliant shine, and new energy-efficient lighting was installed, making the space feel bright and modern. He ordered a diverse new inventory of cars, focusing on reliable, affordable models for his local customers, but also splurging on a couple of eye-catching, slightly more luxurious the dealership's past glory. When the first transport truck arrived with the new cars, Elias stood on the lot watching them unload. A profound sense of satisfaction filling it. "Mr. Henderson," Jimmy said, standing beside him, a proud smile on his face. "It is," Jimmy Elias agreed, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder, "and we're going to make it even better than before." Elias didn't forget the kindness that had been shown to him. Inspired by Elvis's generosity, he started a small initiative in the town. For every 5 cars sold, Maple Street Motors would donate a portion of the profits to a local charity or a family in need. He even helped Jimmy set up a program to offer free oil changes to elderly residents of the town once a month. "It's about giving back, Brenda," Elias explained to his longtime manager. "Elvis didn't have to do what he did, but he did, and it changed everything. I want Maple Street Motors to be more than just a place to buy cars. I want it to be a place that helps our community." "That's a wonderful idea, Mr. Henderson, a wonderful idea." Weeks turned into a month. Maple Street Motors was bustling again. The phone rang with genuine inquiries. Customers walked through the refreshed showroom, and Jimmy was busy in the garage servicing new sales. The dealership was thriving, a testament to unexpected good fortune and Elias's steadfast spirit. Elias still kept the business card Elvis had given him tucked safely in his wallet. He and Brenda had talked about visiting Memphis, about taking Elvis up on his invitation. But life had been so busy, so full of positive change, that they hadn't found the time yet. He wondered if Elvis even remembered his impromptu invitation. One afternoon, Elias was in his office looking at the financial reports. Everything was in the black, a sight that still brought a lump to his throat. He had cleared all his debts, replenished his savings, and ensured a secure future for Maple Street Motors and his employees. He thought about the man who had made it all possible. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, whose spontaneous act of kindness had not only saved a struggling business, but had breathed new life into an entire town. He looked out the window at the busy lot, at the new cars gleaming in the afternoon sun, at the customers chatting with Jimmy and Brenda. He saw smiles, heard laughter, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the affirmation that kindness mattered, that generosity could be a powerful force for good. Elias picked up the phone, feeling a sudden surge of inspiration. "Brenda," he said when she answered, "could you look up some flight times to Memphis for me and find out the best way to get to Graceland once we're there?" Brenda's voice on the other end of the line was filled with surprise and delight. "Are we going, Mr. Henderson, really?" "We are, Brenda," Elias said, a wide smile spreading across his face. "It's time to thank our special customer properly." He leaned back in his chair, a sense of contented anticipation filling him. The future was bright, and it was all thanks to an unexpected visit from the king. The flight to Memphis was Elias Henderson's first time on an airplane in over 2 decades. He sat by the window, a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation fluttering in his chest. Brenda, beside him, was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. She'd bought a new dress for the occasion, and her eyes sparkled with childlike wonder. "Can you believe it, Mr. Henderson?" she exclaimed over the roar of the engines. "We're actually going to Graceland, to Elvis Presley's home." Elias chuckled. "I'm still not entirely sure I believe it, Brenda, but here we are." He thought about the past few months. Maple Street Motors was flourishing. The new inventory had sold quickly, and he'd been able to hire 2 more employees, a young salesman named Mark and another mechanic, helping to ease Jimmy's workload. The dealership buzzed with activity, a stark contrast to the quiet despair that had haunted its halls just a few months prior. His initiative to give back to the community had been met with overwhelming support. The local newspaper had even run a story about Elias's Pay It Forward program, indirectly crediting the inspiration to the mysterious benefactor who had saved Maple Street Motors. Elias never directly mentioned Elvis by name in public, respecting his privacy, but the town knew, everyone knew. Upon landing in Memphis, Tom, Elvis's security man, was waiting for them, just as he had promised. He greeted them warmly and drove them in a comfortable sedan through the bustling city. A stark contrast to their quiet hometown. As they approached Graceland, Elias felt a prickle of awe. It was larger, grander than he'd imagined, but somehow still welcoming. They were ushered inside, and Elias felt a surreal sense of stepping into history. The rooms were opulent, yet comfortable, filled with personal touches. There were other guests, a few familiar faces from the dealership visit, and more people Elias didn't recognize, all friends and family of Elvis. Then Elvis entered the room, his presence as magnetic and warm as Elias remembered. He greeted Elias and Brenda with a genuine smile and a firm handshake. "Elias, Brenda, so glad you could make it. Welcome to Graceland." "Thank you, Elvis," Elias said, his voice filled with sincere gratitude. "It's an honor to be here." Elvis spent time with them, asking about Maple Street Motors, genuinely interested in how the business was doing. Elias told him about the new employees, the bustling showroom, and the community initiative. "That's wonderful, lass," Elvis said, a deep satisfaction in his voice. "That's exactly what I hoped would happen. Good to see good things happening to good people." Later, Elias found himself talking with Joe Esposito, Elvis's longtime friend, who was still driving the station wagon he'd received. "That car is running like a dream, Elias," Joe said, nodding. "Kids love it, Elvis. He just has a way of knowing what people need, and he just gives. He doesn't expect anything in return." "Truly remarkable," Elias agreed, thinking about the simple trust Elvis had shown in him, the complete lack of fanfare around his generosity. As the evening progressed, Elias observed Elvis interacting with his friends and family. He saw the easy camaraderie, the deep bonds, the shared laughter. It wasn't just about the material gifts. It was about the love and loyalty that flowed between them. Elvis wasn't just a performer. He was the patriarch of a loving, extended family, a generous spirit who found joy in making others happy. Before they left, Elias pulled Elvis aside. "Elvis," he began, searching for the right words, "I just wanted to thank you again. What you did for Maple Street Motors, it wasn't just a sale. It was a lifeline. You saved my business, my livelihood, and quite frankly, my spirit. I'll never forget it." Elvis placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, his gaze direct and warm. "Elias, you're a good man. Your business deserved to be saved, and those cars needed good homes. It was a win-win, don't you think?" He smiled. "Just promise me you'll keep that old-fashioned integrity. That's what makes Maple Street Motors special." "I promise," Elvis. Elias said, a lump forming in his throat. "I promise." The return journey felt different. Elias was no longer just a struggling businessman. He was a man touched by grace, inspired to carry forward a legacy of kindness. Maple Street Motors was no longer just a dealership. It was a symbol of hope and community, a place where miracles had happened. Back home, Elias continued to run the dealership with renewed vigor and purpose. He instilled Elvis's spirit of generosity into the fabric of the business. Every time a car was sold, Elias imagined it going to a good home, making someone's life a little better. just as Elvis's gift had done for him and his friends. He often looked at the framed photograph on his desk of Martha, her smile as bright as ever. "We're doing well, my dear," he'd whisper. "And we're doing good. All thanks to a little bit of magic from the king." The legacy of Maple Street Motors, once threatened with extinction, was now stronger than ever, built on a foundation of integrity, hard work, and the extraordinary, unforgettable kindness of Elvis Presley. Months turned into a year. The autumn leaves once again swirled across the newly paved lot of Maple Street Motors, but this time they danced past a bustling scene. The showroom, gleaming with fresh paint and bright lights, coquetted a full array of new and pre-owned vehicles. The garage hummed with the steady work of two mechanics, Jimmy, now the lead, confidently overseeing the operation. The air, once thick with despair, now vibrated with the energy of commerce and community. Elias Henderson stood at the window, not with a sigh of despair, but a quiet smile of contentment. He watched a young couple, eyes bright with excitement, drive away in a shiny new compact car, their first vehicle together. He thought of the journey that car was about to begin with them, the memories it would carry. And he thought of the other cars, the ones Elvis had bought. He wondered about them often. The blue sedan, now probably navigating suburban streets, with Patsy filled with the laughter of her grandchildren. The sturdy station wagon, taking Joe Esposito's family on long road trips, its trunk packed with suitcases and dreams. Cream convertible cruising along a coastal highway with Susie, the wind in her hair, feeling free. And the red coupe, carrying Billy, the young musician, from one gig to another, his guitar riding shotgun, his music filling the night air. Each car, more than just steel and rubber, was a vessel of renewed hope, a symbol of the profound impact one man's generosity could have. Elvis hadn't just bought cars. He had bought a future for Elias, a renewed sense of purpose for his employees, and a tangible expression of care for his friends. Elias walked out onto the lot, the crisp autumn air invigorating. He looked at the Maple Street Motors sign, newly repainted, its letters sharp and clear against the sky. It wasn't just a dealership anymore. It was a landmark of kindness in their small town, a living testament to the day. The king of rock and roll came to call. Brenda emerged from the showroom, a stack of paperwork in her hand, a happy bustle to her steps. "Mr. Henderson, Mr. Davies from the diner just called. He's interested in that new truck we got in." "Tell him I'll be right over, Brenda," Elias said, pulling his jacket tighter against the breeze. He still enjoyed the personal touch, the handshake deals. That was the soul of Maple Street Motors, the part Elvis had recognized and chosen to save. As he walked towards his own old sedan, a familiar song drifted faintly from the radio of a passing car. A classic Elvis tune. Elias smiled, a warmth spreading through him. He often thought about his visit to Graceland, the genuine warmth of Elvis's home, the easy camaraderie of his friends. It had solidified the reality of that incredible day, cementing it in his mind as not just a dream, but a true life-altering event. He climbed into his car, the worn leather seat, a familiar comfort, turned the key and the engine rumbled to life. A steady, reliable sound. He looked out at the thriving dealership, then down the quiet Maple Street, which seemed a little brighter, a little more alive these days. He put the car in reverse, then shifted into drive, pulling out onto the road. He wasn't driving a flashy new model, but his old sedan felt perfect. It had carried him through the darkest days, and now it was carrying him into a future, filled with hope. Elias drove slowly past the familiar shops and homes, heading towards the diner. He felt a deep sense of peace. The road ahead, once uncertain and filled with shadows, now stretched out, open and inviting, leading towards new opportunities, new friendships, and new ways to pay forward the extraordinary kindness. The story of Elvis Presley and Maple Street Motors would continue to be told, a heartwarming legend in their small town. But for Elias Henderson, it was more than just a story. It was the legacy of a kind heart, a powerful reminder that even in the toughest times, a single act of profound generosity could pave the way for a whole new life, opening up the road to unexpected and beautiful destination. And as he drove, the Elvis song still playing softly in the background, Elias knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was meant to be.